Hi everybody, this is Scott Dudley from Funnel Fella Radio, and today my special guest is Sam Ovett, who's based in Boulder, Colorado. He's the co-founder at Mobile Pocket Office, which is leading the way in helping new and established businesses augment their human and technological resources to leverage growth and streamline productivity. Welcome to the show, Sam. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's do this. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. All right, so let's start off with your beginning and your background and how you first got into marketing and automation in particular.
Yeah, so it's a pretty what I think is a little bit untraditional story. I was a professional athlete doing in the outdoor industry, extreme sports, and was doing that and guiding and was involved with, what I found out was as a professional athlete, not only are you a capable human, but you're also part of the marketing plan. And so I learned that, hey, I was just a tool in the marketing plan. I was part of somebody's yearly plan to grow a brand, and in this case, multiple brands that I was representing. So based on that, what I found out was basically I started to see holes, and there's another background that plays into it. Is I grew up around my dad, who's also my partner in this aspect of the business, and he's always been involved with business process, not always on the marketing side, not always on the sales side, sometimes more on the downstream side of business, in the manufacturing aspect of it and the delivery. But I had that perspective growing up of looking at things through a business process lens. And so then based on what I started seeing in the outdoor industry, I noticed, hey, there's a lot of gaps. People are inefficient, right? You get people really interested in stuff, but then you don't use automation to follow up with people. You don't put them down what we now talk about as funnels, right? So there's just this big lack, this big gap. I started seeing that. So when I started seeing it one place, then every business I came across, which is all the time, we all buy things all the time. We're all interacting. I started to see, wow, there's these huge opportunities just all over the place. You're just littered all over the landscape. Anybody you do business with, you start to realize there's just these massive gaps, and that very few businesses actually use this idea of funnels and automation combined and process to drive people to the next decision or make the experience better or more delightful, or move people down and increase their conversion. So that led me into this whole world, and I decided, okay, I don't want to be a professional athlete anymore, and I wanted to do something different. And so I was seeing this everywhere, was involved in the marketing side of it by nature of being on the athlete side, and then decided, hey, wait a second, there's this whole opportunity here. And I had a background through my degree and then just my upbringing around technology as well, in the ability to work with, just the computer. In my generation, it's not exactly rocket science figuring out how to use some of these things, but you have to have the mind for understanding how to implement them and do them so they're effective. And I said, man, what an opportunity. Everybody could be increasing their conversions and reducing their workload. And so that's the background. That's where it all really started. And that was around my early mid 20s. I decided, I was having a great time. I was running around hucking myself off of waterfalls in a kayak, and being a professional athlete and guiding all over, and it was great. But I wanted to make a transition, and that was the natural thing for me, because I decided, for whatever reason, I sort of realized that, hey, if I can help people make more money, they'll be happy to pay.
For sure. Yeah, it's sort of an interesting background combining extreme sports with marketing. So, I mean, in Boulder, Colorado, is that pretty big, extreme sports? I imagine it might be.
Oh my God. You go running up a hill around here and you think you're going fast, and somebody in their 90s comes flying past you. And you can see me. I may not be the fittest ever, but I'm not a slob over here. And it is a absolutely big time extreme sports. I mean, we're 8 miles from the nearest ski resort. There's an endless amount of backcountry. We have Rocky Mountain National Park, which is one of the largest playgrounds. And then everywhere around here, we've got thousands of routes for climbing and all kinds of kayaking in the canyon down here. So
cool.
It's epic. Yeah. It's a real good spot for it.
Excellent. All right then. So tell me a bit about your consulting business, Mobile Pocket Office, and what services you provide for your customers.
Yeah, so here's what we do, right? It's pretty straightforward. The whole idea is to help people be human where it counts and otherwise automate. That's what we've been walking around telling people and talking about. And we believe it simply because the idea that there are a lot of things you do in your business to run your business, but very few of them actually contribute to generating new business. A lot of it has to do with just completing the processes that have to happen to manage the business, right? And if we could all automate the parts of our business that create the busy work, and we were freed up to spend a lot more time on the pieces of our business that actually delivered new customers and were the creative part of increasing the experience, making it better, well, boy, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? And even being able to have that time to call the people who were your customers or reach out to them in very personal ways and say thank you and appreciate their business, that would be great. So what we do with people, and do you want me to talk about a little framework there of how we actually do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, go into it. Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, and this is something folks can use for their own business as well, which is really cool. Is you look at a business, we do in this way. So the first thing we do is we say, well, we have people come to us in two different fashions. One is I'm starting something new and I got some funding for it and I want to do it well from the get-go. The other is I've got a problem because I've got a lot of work that I'm doing and I can't scale past this point, right? I either have to hire people or use technology. And so those are the problems we see. And then we take that context and we make a map. And that's so important. Before we start opening up tools, logging in, clicking on stuff and making things happen, we slow it down and we make a map and we say, what is it that you want to do? What's the outcome, right? And so the first thing we have people do is a personal activity log. Real simple. Anybody can do this. Just start recording everything that you do and do this for, depending on your business, it could be 2 days to about a 2-week period. But 2 days is usually a good starting point for folks. Write down all the things you do to run the business throughout the day. And then you'll find out what different things you spend your time doing. And now you have an idea of what are the different things that make up your processes in your business, right? And if you have a business with many departments, you have people from different sections do that, and they start to see, what do we actually do? And it's not to punish people, it's to identify what are the tasks and could they be automated? And is there a process at all? Usually there is.
Yeah.
Right. Usually there's a process, and then from there, once you find out what the process is, that's when you start to look at automation, and then we break it up. So that's the first step to, it's like, where do you start with this stuff, right? They're designing a funnel, but then there's automating process, and while they're similar, they're different, and they can be different. And so we look at the 5 pieces of a business, right? You got to attract new business. Everybody's got to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're out of business. You gotta convert that new business into leads and sales. Then whatever you promised, you got to fulfill it, right? And then from there, that's where most businesses stop. Then you gotta, and so at that point, most people stop. Then really good businesses start to delight their customers. And that also increases the average transaction value because they're saying, hey, we've got this other thing that we go along really well with it that helps you get more out of the product, even more, right? Or they give you some tips. They ask you, how's it going? And they make sure that you're supported and you're really using it. And then the last piece is referrals. Most people just wait around and hope for referrals. If it's a really good product, they happen fairly naturally, but if it's a really good product at the same time or service, they could happen even more frequently if you had a systemized way to make sure that everybody was getting asked for referrals, right? So you've got attract, convert, fulfill, delight, refer. So you take those 5 pieces, and they work for any business.
Yeah.
You take those 5 pieces, and now you say, okay, great. Within those, what are our processes? What do we do? Right? That's a system that runs business. But what are the processes within those? That's where you use that log and you start to write it down. And then at that point, now you have a something to look at and go, what within these processes, within these sections of our business systems, should we automate?
Okay.
What's the highest leverage point, right? And so then if you say, hey, we really need to get more leads in, right, that are good, that are going to convert to sales, then maybe that's when you should be doing a funnel, right? You want to look at a funnel that you can then put out to the world. Or maybe you're real good at getting leads, but you're not real great at converting them. Well, maybe you need to look at your sales cycle and the ones that do convert and then go, what's going on there? Could we improve the funnel in that stage, right?
Yeah.
And same for all the pieces of the process. You can add, if we're talking in funnel, you can add the funnel steps into those pieces of the process. And then you automate as much as you can so that you can then take the time to just, be human, work on the creative stuff and not have to hire more people to scale things that can be done with technology.
Yeah,
you hire smart people to really creative people to work on the marketing, the attracting of new people.
Yeah.
And maybe if you have a need for customer service, you spend your money on customer service people that are really good because that helps with referrals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, absolutely. So including yourself, how many team members do you have?
Yeah, so we've got, I don't know, it depends on the project, but we've got a core staff of a handful of folks, and then we bring people on and contract them for bigger projects when we need to get specialized with the technology. So it's a pretty small core unit, folks, and then we go bigger as needed, and we
Yeah, I
scale.
see. Yeah.
And we have people that we just hire on a regular basis because we know they're really good for certain things. But we don't. For us, we don't need to keep a full-time developer on because it depends on what we're working on.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Because we bring them in for specific types of
Yep.
integration, stuff like that. Because we do get into the implementation of technology. But that said, we try and use systems that require, our goal is to get people systems that they can use and manage themselves. So we try and there inevitably is development type of stuff that has to be done. But gosh, as much as we can avoid somebody writing code and use a system that's set up for people, we really like to do that because it is just that much easier, that much more flexible. And we like people to be able to move things around and make adjustments, and track it. And that's the other thing, and track it. How is it working? Is it working?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Big thing. You have that automation aspect, and then you have the other, hey, you made these changes. Is it working?
Okay.
Make sure you're checking.
Yeah, for sure. So who's your ideal customer niche or target market for this?
Yeah, so for this kind of thing, here's the deal. I find that if your company's not doing $500,000 or more in revenue, you're either starting up. So, okay, that's an interesting starting point, but largely you don't have processes defined yet. So you don't have a need because you're being so flexible and changing things. Everybody should be automating certain things in their business, right?
Yeah.
That are just kind of no-brainer automations. We can talk about those, but outside of that, there are not many companies I've seen under the $500,000 in revenue mark that aren't just making so many changes on a regular basis to their process that it makes sense to really invest in bringing someone in to look at your automation and look at your process and find out where you can automate more of it. Because by the time you've got it automated, you probably have changed it anyways. If you're growing, because you're adjusting the way you do things. So $500,000 more in revenue annually. That's where we start to see people are really making decisions about, I need to hire people, and could I do technology instead? And if I did it smartly with technology, the technology never takes a vacation, right? It always works. Well, true. Most of the time it always works. And, and from that point, that's where you can really grow, and there's all kinds of stories where people are going, do I need to hire more people to, to manage onboarding new customers, to manage fulfillment, to manage to manage refer, to manage this? It's like, really, I'd rather see people investing in hiring people who are great, brilliant marketers. Because that's the hard work, right?
Yeah,
that's the hard work. Yeah. If you can systemize, create process around, and then apply automation to stuff after you get that lead in the door, boy, you can really scale. But if you don't do it leading it, you can't necessarily scale the marketing. You got to be constantly trying new stuff there. There are ways you can obviously spend more on ad spend if something's working, but you still got to be watching that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's what I find is that the hardest part is getting that new interest. And that's where you want to hire the brilliant people and automate everything else that you can.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so without naming the actual client, tell us about one of your most successful marketing campaigns and why you believe it performed so well.
Let's think here for a second. Well, I'll tell you an example of one we actually were involved with for a company.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting one. And I can tell you that it was a company down in Australia, and they were a kind of full service salon, pretty big salon that had not only the hair side of what's done in a salon, but they were kind of you would go and it's kind of a wellness place, right? They had a spa, they had like yoga, Pilates, like the whole deal. You could go and just spend the day there and feel good about yourself and do all these healthy things for you. And they had an issue where, and this was a marketing campaign, which is kind of funny because we don't get involved in the raw marketing that often, but it is important because it's part of the funnels, and we get involved with the converting aspect of it, and the tracking, is it working? So this one, they had a customer list of, it was about 20,000 customers that they had moved locations, rebranded about 2 or 3 years ago, and they had all these customers they'd had for years, right, that had come. But just because somebody comes once to that kind of thing doesn't mean they come all the time. So they wanted to see, hey, could we re-engage some of these customers? So there's two parts to the story. One was that where it was re-engaging them. So there was a outbound message to all these customers who had given them their information, phone number and email, and they messaged them via text and via email, and they were able to convert enough to fill up the salon for the next 3 months.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then the salon aspect of it, right? The hair. Then they said, hey, our Pilates is not doing so great. We want to improve that. We need more people, right? Our instructors are not as busy as they need to be. We want to grow that aspect. So we helped them in this case, and this is rare, but we helped them come up with some Facebook ads that we ran. And then the key is we tied automation to that whole process. So it wasn't just an ad, dump a lead and hope somebody follows up and comes. It was a whole process around, and people have seen this kind of thing before, but it was get a 2-week trial free, right? Come try it out. And making sure though that we got their information, and if they didn't fill out the form when they hit it, we followed them up with a retargeting ad.
Okay.
Right, and we automated adding people and removing them from the retargeting ad. And then as soon as they filled out their information, we followed up with making sure that they actually took advantage of it, because we just spent money on that lead. We wanted to get them in the door for that company. We wanted to convert them, because if they never got in the door, that doesn't matter, right? They're never going to have that experience. They're not going to have the human part of it and find out if it's a good fit. And so at that point, what we did is we would follow up with email, right? Using automation, but it was all based on the actions they'd taken and tied to their database of whether someone attended a class or not and signed up for one. Okay. And if they signed up but didn't attend, there was automation to make sure that they got another one, right? And so this whole process created $1 million in annual recurring revenue over the course of 4 weeks of getting people in the door for them, and based on their attrition rate. And so at that point, they filled up their classes, which is amazing. And it's always exciting when you put an ad out and knocks it out of the park. And
for sure,
some of that, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, I'll be honest with you, right? Like,
yeah.
But this was a case where the market was not saturated with this kind of advertising, and there was a desire for it. They were one of a few Pilates studios in the range, in the surrounding area, and I think they were in Brisbane, that was catering to this particular type of Pilates.
Okay.
And so they got people in, they got $1 million in recurring revenue going. And then what we found, they said, okay, based on our numbers and our churn rate, we're expecting this will be very good. and people stuck around. And then a few months later, they said, hey, okay, numbers have dropped a little, right? We've lost some people. Let's turn the ads back on. Let's put some new blood back in it. Turn them back on, put people back through that same funnel. And then now they can just turn the faucet on and off. And that's
Nice.
like the magic, you know, doesn't happen all the time, but that's the magic when you just toggle the button and then your business fills up. That's the cool stuff.
Absolutely. Very exciting. All right, so if we just pivot a little bit, what are your
Yeah.
favorite online tools and platforms you use to run your business? I noticed on your website you're a big fan of Entreport.
Yeah, we sure are. We've been real involved with them as the core tool to manage all the data and flowing through, because when you automate something, you know, and it's not a fit for everybody, right? We look at tools like you're building a house. When you look at automation, you got to make the blueprint, you got to figure out what you need, and then you pick the tools. You don't pick the tools and then build the house.
True.
You design it first and then pick out the tools you need to build it.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, because I think we all on the internet it's very easy to get, oh, look at this new tool, look at that new tool, you know, and it's like, hey, look at that guy or gal over there that is killing it with tools from 10 years ago. It's not about the tools. It's not about the tools. It's about the offer. If you got a bad product, no good tool is going to solve it.
Okay.
You know, it's never going to solve it. If you've got a bad product or you deliver poorly, no tool is going to solve your problem. However, to automate stuff, you do need some tools. And we all know there's multiple tools that are involved in a business. We had one customer, these folks, Mastering Diabetes. People can look it up, masteringdiabetes.org, New York Times bestseller. They've got a coaching program and a whole online infrastructure of courses, and people can work with nutritionists to help them manage their diabetes through diet. And these guys both live with type 1 diabetes. It's incredible. So, you know, we're fortunate to get to work with some cool people. But they had like 67 tools. We literally made a list of all the tools they use, all the tools that they logged into, 67 tools. I mean, that was everything from the stuff they use to manage their finances all the way to the front end marketing stuff and the delivery. But that was a lot. We were able to bring that list down to around 20 in their situation. And then we said, you know, the hardest thing for them was they were hiring people literally to move data around. You know, export it from one tool, import it to another. This kind of promotion to there, to then to find. You've seen that before.
Yeah.
And it's a mess. The headache takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that was like, they were paying people to do this kind of thing. We said, hold up. This is where we can put Entreport or something like it. In this case, we're just fond of it because their support is really great. And they have a great open API. For those who know what that is, it means you can just connect other things to it.
Yeah.
And what that allowed us to do is they reduced the number of staff that were spending their time moving data around, because now we're able to use one central tool to flow some of these other tools that they were requiring to run their business through one, and they could look at one central record and see everything that had happened for that individual, right? And that was key. And then they could trigger all the automation off of that. And that made a huge difference in, number one, they were spending less money on paying people to do this. And in their situation, they had people kind of doing dual things, right? They were either helping being a coach for the nutrition side and then also getting paid to do some data work for them, right? It's pretty common. Someone, hey, can we pay you? You know, we trust you. We know you for this other part of the business. Can we pay you to do this data work, right? But they could also be filled up with the kind of core work they're really interested in doing and not doing this random stuff. Or they had someone internally that was, you know, responsible for managing automation once it was in place in their process. And that person was bogged down moving data around when they really didn't need to be doing that. That was a waste of their time, but it had to be done.
Yeah.
So that's why we use tools like Entreport. So we're real fond of Entreport. And then I got to say, Zoom. I love Zoom. I mean, just in this day and age, and I know people are probably zoomed out at this point with the coronavirus.
Yeah.
You know, we're recording it during that time, and we're going into the second wave of lockdowns in certain places, and I know it's fatigue, but boy, without it, without a Zoom or a Skype or some kind of real easy video conferencing tool, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. I mean, all of our stuff is totally remote, and as much as it's not the same as an in-person experience, it makes the way we do business possible.
Well, I mean, we've got a conference on at the moment between Perth and Colorado, so there's you know, two different corners of the world. So that just goes to prove it, doesn't it? Yeah.
And it's, I mean, if we look back a little bit, like it's pretty incredible that it is as good as it is.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's kind of cliche maybe, but that one and Oxford, and then there's one that we use to actually do the mapping. That's a free tool that I think people would benefit from. And this helps you get your ideas. You go this, then this, kind of like a pinball machine, right? For automation. This happens, then this happens, then this happens. And you just think about it that way. And it's called diagrams.net.
Okay.
And we love that too. I mean, that is just a fantastic one. It's real easy to use. You drag and drop the blocks around. It allows us to do a Zoom call with someone and get all these ideas. You know, what do you want to happen? And then consult with them and then get it onto paper, right? A digital paper, if you will. And people can print it out or whatever. But then they have this blueprint. So it's the digital architecting tool for the tech stack, if you will.
Yeah. So you just like screen sharing. You're screen sharing, I guess. Yeah.
You're screen sharing. And then you have this map. You go, I know what my business does. I know how it runs. I know the processes involved. And then when you bring somebody else on to your business, a new person that you need to train, you go, well, let me walk you through the maps. This is how our business flows at a high level. And then, okay, you're responsible for managing and improving this part of the experience. Here's how this works.
Nice.
It's all documented.
Excellent. All right. So what are some of the biggest and most common mistakes that you see clients making? I would imagine that one of the main ones would be sort of getting the right balance between automation and personalization. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so I love that question. I think there's a few things, and boy, number one is right out of the gate, I think people don't, with the tools they do have, they're generally underutilizing them, and they're going out and they're paying for a lot more tools than they need because they got marketed to about a specific feature.
Yeah.
And they didn't even realize that, like, oh, you already got that. What are you doing? You know, and now you're moving data from one place to the other and losing track of it. The other thing is when it comes to thinking about automation is people want to focus a lot on automating the delivery and the fulfillment aspect right away in some instances because it's tangible and it takes up time. But I think you should automate as much you can around conversion so that you can improve that. And then you're happy to do more with the rest later. You know, if you've got an actual problem with fulfillment, not a perceived problem, then you're doing good. Then you should automate that, but not until that point. Focus on the things that make you money first when it comes to this. You know, get really good at getting leads and then figure out how to convert those leads into sales, because otherwise you're just either blowing money on ads or wasting time on all the organic content you're doing. And I think the other thing is just being aware not to make an automation avalanche is what I call it.
That's a good analogy for Colorado.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it sure is. And so what happens, you know, is, and everybody I think kind of understands the idea of an avalanche. You know, there's a big cascade and it destroys stuff. And what happens is people start creating automation. They get real excited once they learn about it. Like, wow, I can automate this, I can automate that. But they're making processes and they don't realize that if one thing happens and it's kicking off another one, and they don't really know how it all is connecting. And now customers are getting communication they shouldn't be receiving. That doesn't make sense. That's confusing, you know? So you don't need to like drink from the fire hose, like just take it one step at a time, you know, and automate the things that free up your time quickly. The ones that you're really truly spending time on. If you go, hey, if I automated this, then I could step back, take a deep breath and look at my business. Those are the key things, because if you can't do that, then you're just putting out fires all the time.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know.
So you sort of suggest it's better to optimize the top of the funnel first rather than sort of the middle or the bottom of it. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you seen that before? I mean, I see it quite commonly. People say, oh, we're going to build out the whole world. You know, it's like, does anybody want it? Yeah. You know? Does anybody want it in that way? I mean, we'll have people go out and say, hey, look, before you do anything, right? I know you want to automate stuff. People who are trying to launch, this is usually people trying to launch a new offering within their line of business, right? We say, hey, just go run some ads or write a post about it or put it up to your community with the bare minimum. See if anybody's interested in it and say, okay, great. Thanks for your interest. It's coming soon. We'll let you know when it's out, right? But see if you can get that messaging to get people excited to give you their information. And then if that's the case, then invest in the automation around converting and track it. That's the other big problem people do wrong. They don't track what they're doing. And then when they do start tracking it, here's what they do next. They start tracking it and they go, oh, well, that's working. Let's try something different. Let's see if we can make it better. And then they throw out everything they've been doing and try something brand new. They have no idea if it's going to work. Don't do that. That's dangerous. That's silly. Put 25% of the people that come into your business, the new people, down the new process, and leave the other 75% that's supporting your business. Leave it running until you get that 25% working better than the 75%.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And then swap it out and then just keep doing that till you improve it. But don't wholesale change. I see people go, oh, we do all this manual work. And what they don't realize is sometimes some of the work they're doing that's manual is the human touch that's required and is making people so happy and creating happy customers and also converting them into sales from leads. So before people go automating every step of their process, I say for everybody in their business, I say start with a small chunk in a specific process, automate that, see how it goes, improve your messaging, and then make your adjustment to the majority of the people flowing through your business.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so what are you curious about or researching right now regarding digital marketing and automation?
I think there is still a big opportunity out there to make it easier to make it happen. I think it's just too damn hard. I think it's too hard to do this stuff. I mean, you got to be pretty darn nerdy and into this stuff.
Yeah.
To make it happen. And I think while it's easier than ever, it's still too hard for the majority of businesses.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily fit with the way they do business. So they're adapting this stuff to a business type that doesn't really fit some of these tools. And then the other thing right now, and this is controversial, is tracking. I think tracking and analytics of automation, is it working, is largely really, really hard for people to figure out.
I would agree with that, yes.
And as soon as you add complexity to it, it can be tracked, but you've got to be very, very diligent about staying on top of it. And if you're not, you lose track of hard work or money spent in terms of if it's effective. And that aspect of it, just in all the different tools that are out there, and the ability for someone being in an executive role looking at this information to actually make good decisions on it is still hard. I think it's still hard, and I'm looking forward to seeing that improved. And the bottom line is you can do it with the tools that exist today, but it's hard. And you got to be really technically savvy. You've got to keep everything in line, and you've got to be super on top of it. Otherwise, you lose track of what's effective, what's not. And so I think there's a big opportunity to make it easier for people to go, not just here's your results, but what do I do with them? That's hard. People say, okay, I see this. Now, what do I do with it? Because most things aren't runaway successes when you make changes. They're incremental. And they make a little bit of a difference, but that little bit of a difference over a lot of customers means a lot more money.
For sure.
Or a lot of money saved. And that is where I think people have trouble. I mean, if something outperforms something just dramatically, where anecdotally you go, we have a lot more money than we did before, well, then you're going to do that. But it's the things that are the small changes that are a little harder to interpret for people. I think that is where there's the opportunity for a lot of improvement across this landscape of automation,
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, then. So just to wrap up, where can people go to find out more about your services and or your products?
Yeah, so they can go to mobilepocketoffice.com. And if you want, Scott, do you do show notes in your show?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Tell you what, we can make a page, mobilepocketoffice.com/funnelfella. radio. Would that be good? And we can give
Sounds good.
some resources for folks there. They can go get the basically the three things we talked about that are the big ones, right? The personal activity log,
Yep.
the 5 pillars that you need to look at that make up your business, and then using that, how to use that personal activity log to then decide what to automate.
Sounds awesome. All right, that'd be
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, well, we'll give that away for folks, and you know, if people want to book a time, they can do that on the website. There's a big book a call button.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that.
And we're
Yeah.
happy to chat, you know, and you'll talk to me and the big man, my dad, and he's always a good time. And you know, we're not here to beat people up about their automation. We're here to help people make it so that they have a little bit of time. You know, we just in the States here came off of Thanksgiving
Yep.
holiday, and for anybody who wasn't able to take time off during that holiday because they had to run their business, you need to be looking at automation and thinking to yourself,
Good point.
I mean, and we're not perfect, but we do have some things automated. I turned my computer, I unplugged my laptop and I let it die. And I just fired it up this morning, and you know,
Okay.
it was fine. It was fine. So that's kind of the litmus test. Can you take a couple weeks off consecutively, let your computer die? Does your business still run?
Yeah, good point.
If it doesn't, then you need to be looking at automation.
Agreed. All right then, excellent. Thanks for being on the show, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Scott.
Cool. Take care.